One thing from the last talk was the whole idea of, the Dalai Lama. And I said that it's been a long time since I've seen anything from the Dalai Lama or heard him speak about, the present day situation. And my phone must have been listening to us, because lo and behold, the next day I get one of those Facebook ads with Dalai Lama talking to Lady Gaga, which was,
wow,
weird combination, but they were talking about kindness and just being kind in general. Well, really the clip that I saw, it's probably like a 30-second clip, was Lady Gaga talking about kindness with the Dalai Lama just sitting there. And one thing she kind of got into was I'm going to paraphrase, but the basis of it was that being kind doesn't cost anything. And it's generally the easier route than being mean. And it'll help everybody. It'll bring people together. It'll get things done. And again, I'm paraphrasing it. She, had a lot of flowery language that helped her point along. And, when you're thinking about the Dalai Lama, that is generally the types of things that you'll hear from him. But again, there's a lot of flowery language that help to push that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing, when she was talking, there's one thing that I was thinking about, and it's the fact that I could argue against her pretty easily on that point. It was the whole, people will say, well, that's all well and good, but we live in a world where other humans are always trying to overtake other humans. We're always fighting. There's limited resources. Some people are fighting to survive on a daily basis. So they'll go to extreme ends to get what they need to survive and overtake other humans and, murder and steal and do all these horrible things, right? So just simply saying kindness is the way to go, that's not a very good argument.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask, how is it easier to be kind? Because I could also argue, like, it's easier to lose your cool and do your unkind thing. Yeah, that might be your easiest go-to route or whatever. It might be really hard for you to be kind or something. There's a lot of factors. So yeah, it just sounds like a general.
Exactly. And it's something that I've worked out reasonably and logically and, spiritually and all that. But really, it kind of reminded me of that whole point of there needs to be better arguments for things and more precise language, because the whole, isn't it obvious that you should just be a good human?
Obviously not.
Yeah. What does that mean? If it was that obvious and easy, why isn't everybody doing it?
Right. And why do you have to remind everybody that why?
Exactly.
Why have a public service announcement about what's natural?
Exactly. And how are we debating on all of these topics, throughout anything, politics, racism, how is there even a debate if it's that obvious,
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that I was kind of, I really took from that is, again, you need more precise arguments. Like when you dive into why is kindness better than being mean and taking from other humans, that's a hard thing to reason. That's not just surface level type talk.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with politics, when you both sides think they're being kind in some way, shape, or form, But anyway, the next thing that kind of came to my mind was the past few podcasts, we have been kind of sitting on the surface and then diving maybe like a level or two below and talking about these things. Sure. And I kind of want to take a little bit of a Krishnamurti route on this and do a full dive, go deep,
good,
real deep, right?
Yeah, I had some things to say. Not necessarily first. You asked if it comes up, and I guess it will. So we'll see.
Yeah. So I have a question. a Krishnamurti type question that I thought of directly after watching that video. The question really is about meaning. And with all of the different issues that we're having today, and again, we've talked about how things keep seeming more divisive, and people are just getting deeper and deeper stuck in their ideologies and not seeing where the connections are, and also getting pulled in different directions as far as, the expansion of the universe. We've talked about that, where as the universe expands, there's more elements to pay attention to. So there's more opportunity to get caught in that web of separation rather than being able to see the underlying connections that bring it all together, right? The archetypes that pull everything down into a singularity. Right. So where I kind of took that was, could it be that there is generally a lack of recognition of a universal meaning?
That what causes the discord? That causes the discord.
So think about it this way. Again, there's all the elements. We have the expanding universe that's creating more and more elements. As you go deeper down those levels, like we're talking about, where more and more things become one until you reach that singularity, mm-hmm. There's a universal meaning there. There's a reason. So let me just talk about meaning for a second. What is meaning really?
What do you mean by meaning?
Yeah, what do I mean by meaning exactly? So without meaning, there's kind of an unknowing, like a chaos. There's if you look at something and you can't derive a meaning from it, or you experience something, you can't derive a meaning from it, as humans, we get this feeling of being lost, of fear, of loneliness, of freaking out because we don't know how to handle it. We don't know what reaction to put on the thing that's happening in the moment. Mm-hmm. So we try to put things in boxes. We label things. We assign meaning to them, some type of meaning, so that we can have a better way forward, a picture of something, some way we should react, or know it. It produces knowing. Meaning, really assigning a meaning to something produces a knowing, so that I can better handle future situations that might arise. Yeah. Right? I've seen this thing before. This is how I reacted before. This is how I should react again because it worked the last time I confronted this problem or this chaos. So basically, meaning takes chaos and it orders it. It puts it into an order that we can recognize in the future.
Okay, go on. But you're also asking how that leads to disorder too. So that's interesting.
Exactly. So a lack of a universal meaning. Again, if we see all these elements on the surface and we do not see how they all connect, even though they do all connect, we're not recognizing that they connect. Mm-hmm. So we have lost this universal meaning between everybody. And that's how we can argue the tit for tat till days on end and never reach. It's because nobody is trying to get to that further meaning. And you have things like religion, like Christianity, which tried to create stories, really focusing on these archetypes and really trying to show you the archetypes without having the language of saying it. So, and you have all types of other religious texts and spiritual texts that try to really focus on those archetypes to show you that things really do connect. Things are the same. It really is just complexity projected from a singularity. And if you think about science and all of these tit for tat games we're playing with, science and all of the now probably millions of religions that there are nowadays, all of them are focusing on the tit for tat. Nobody's focusing on the archetypes underlying them. So again, we don't have a universal meaning, where I feel like that's why Christianity lasted for so long and the Bible has lasted for such a long time is because it does focus on those archetypes and bringing people together and showing them how no matter what's going on, it's all the same thing, and there's like an overarching principle you can use to assign meaning to everything to help you move forward with your life in a more optimal direction. And so that's my question is, could it be that because of the expansion of the universe, the increasing amount of elements that we have to pay attention to on a daily basis, the division of religions into sects, the division of science into sects, and all of that stuff drives us further and further away from those archetypes. And again, it's harder to get through the web of all those elements and get down to the archetypes. So we really are lacking some type of universal meaning. And that's why we are where we are.
Well, I think if Kay were here, he might say, is it basically thought that is the issue here, the root issue? All right, so on the one hand, of course, we need to know, that the snake is deadly, that this crosswalk is dangerous. So we need part of that. I think part of it comes from in the projection, in the, multiplicity. A part of that is to be seemingly separate. That's the sort of eyes where, we have. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. That's part of what this side of the coin, if you will, of the whole thing, the outward part, that's what makes it so good, is it's, diverse and different, separate. So that's just like one half of it. But I think we get caught there because we associate or we assign meaning to things, which is thought, giving knowledge to things. I don't know if there is a universal meaning, except maybe to, come back to the start, if you will. I don't know if there's any other meaning than that. That's at least how I look at it. The reason for anything to be is to experience that difference and then grow back in ultimately, to come back. Or else what purpose could there be?
Well, if you think about that situation you just brought up of, the snake crossing your path and to kind of steer clear because the snake could hurt you, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if we look at all of the complexity that we have grown into, there's spiders that can hurt you. We're scared of spiders. There's certain things, there's other things, situations that you come upon that you have this feeling, this is danger, right? Mm. Whether it's a snake, whether it's a spider, whether it's an airplane, whether it's being in a car, whether it's being near a sharp object or those things that make you queasy, all of them do have the underlying archetype, which is just danger. Mm-hmm. You're going to react in some way that can be boiled down to a couple different paths, whether it's stay away from the thing, whether it's fight against the thing, whether it's try to overpower the thing and use it to your benefit. You can derive these archetypes from those situations no matter what the actual element is, right? So that tells you that there are universal principles. It's fight or flight. There's a universal principle there that no matter what chaos you come upon, you can label it all chaos, depending on how you want to look at it. So there, again, you can get to these layers down where you can develop a reactionary system that again is layers down, where it's taking the complicated formulas and really looking at the universal principles you can take out of those complicated formulas. And so I feel like if you can get that far down, again, it has to keep going. It has to keep collapsing and collapsing and collapsing until there is a universal meaning. And
why does there have to be?
It's a good question. Why does there have to be?
I mean, you have the hypothesis that there could
is.
be.
Yeah.
Well, there is. Yeah. I just wonder how you got there. Because I mean, I think Kay would say that there is no meaning, even beyond what I was saying about whatever I said. It's that's just romanticizing the situation. But he would say there is absolutely no meaning.
I believe it's because I am able to contemplate the idea of singleness. No matter the amount of things the amount of elements you can put into any system, there still is the fact that it is a system. It's one system, right?
Sure.
And so if I take that and expand it to the totality of everything, literally everything that ever couldn't be, the interplay of anything to make a system, and it's obvious we're in a system of some sort. Everything's connected together in one environment in some way, shape, or form. So for me, if there can be a Rick that is the culmination of a billion other systems within me, and there's the singleness that is Rick, and you can reason that to any level of reality, the world, the universe, the galaxy, the sun, all the way down to single cells to atoms. Singleness is the only thing that seems to be that really spans across all of space and time. And so it just makes logical sense that it would expand out to that. So I feel like that's kind of where I started, really thinking about everything. Literally everything is one thing,
Right.
And so again, to me, it gets pretty obvious that no matter the scale, the relation of things really feeds into itself. The relation of me to you has some impact on the world, right? We're part of the world. We have some impact on the world. And then that world has an impact in the solar system. That solar system has an impact into the universe, and the universe has an impact in all of existence. Yeah, and it all connects at some point somewhere. So that means that it is all one system. There is a singleness to it, and so in all of that complexity, there's a singleness. So when I think of, again, the meaning of everything, and I play that backwards, where I go, okay, there's always a tit for a tat. There's about a billion different elements that I could possibly know about. To live in the world right now, you have to know about all of the different environments you can encounter, how to react in all of those different environments, all the different animals and plants and air quality and food you can eat and light sources and, just all these different things. So for me to really, if I was to travel the world, which a lot of us do now, which we weren't doing 100 years ago, you have to know so many things. And so we have these base codes in our brains, in our, biological systems, like this base code that kind of give us an idea of how to react to things outside of the norm, react to that chaos, to put order to the chaos. Yeah, I might not know what this animal is, but it's big. It's got sharp teeth. It looks scary. Probably going to stay away from it, right? That's an archetype. That's not, I've never seen this animal before. It's chaotic. Right. And I put order to it by knowing I should probably stay away from it. Mm-hmm. And so that's my reaction to that archetype. So again, you follow all these things through and you go, this is generally how everything works. So there has to be an ultimate order, an ultimate singleness that, again, I feel if we were to recognize that, and follow it through, how all of these tits for tats, how all of these elements grew out of that singleness, it would make swimming through that sea of elements a little bit easier for all of us.
Right.
But we're not. And it's
Right.
getting harder and harder and harder as more elements go into the sea, because we're stuck on the fact that we have to understand all of the elements to be able to control them, to be able to turn that chaos into order. Whereas what I would say is that if you get down to that singleness, if you look at those archetypes, it becomes easier and easier to derive some kind of path forward, even within that sea of complexity. And the whole reason I'm even bringing this question up is because of exactly why we're doing this podcast. Mm-hmm. Because this is an ideology that I have. Mm. This is my ideology, that to optimally traverse reality, what you want to do is find that singleness, find that archetype, find where all the nodes of life connect into one point, so that you can understand the totality of it. And when you are swimming through that sea of elements, again, you have the full picture, and it makes sense, and it makes for better choices in every move you make. And I feel like nobody does that. And I feel like it's not obvious. And I feel like it's really hard to get there. But I feel like it's necessary. But again, that's my ideology. And that's why I asked that Krishnamurti question. Is that the way? Is that the path? Is that what we should be doing?
I wouldn't say according to Kay. I wouldn't think so. So you're saying a lot of things, but one thing that caught me at the end there was that when you see these archetypes, you have the full picture. And I'm just, this one statement, he brought it up a couple of times, but he was talking about looking inward and, quote, reading the book of humanity, right? Which is the connected book of all of us, the book of humanity. He said, if you read that book, you will find it doesn't say anything. And he also, talks about, gathering up all the snapshots to make a whole map. And can you see the whole map on the instant and wipe it away and proceed? That was always Kay's point where we're at. That's what he would say here, I believe. To him, I don't think that his mind had any use for even the archetype to archetype, what you're advocating. I don't know that his mind did that it functioned that way. Mm-hmm. Who am I to say? But according to, the way he expressed it, I don't think that's what he was advocating.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's not necessary.
I'm not saying what I'm advocating is what Kay advocating. The only way I'm relating to Kay is that I'm asking a question about the general nature of humans. That's all. Yeah. I'm just reflecting on that again.
Yeah, I'm just saying, according to Kay, that's the general nature of humans. Yeah. From his view. Are you asking my view?
So when you're saying wipe away,
yeah.
So do you mean from like moment to moment, you hold no prior thoughts about a situation, you just react to the situation without any baseline to it?
Not a baseline of knowledge, according to Kay. As a matter of fact, as I was, listening and things were coming back up, and when I was talking about it's, you need this certain kind of memory knowledge as like a snake. Actually, he would say that you don't need thought or knowledge or any time at all to know that you're standing on the edge of a cliff. It is like an abstract, instant intuition that this is danger. You don't even need thought. So you don't even need to use an archetype to respond to that situation. adequately is the word he would probably use. I mean, you might slip and fall and still die or whatever, but according to him in this, I would say it would be wiping away knowledge moment by moment if there were any residue of it. For him, I don't think he had much of that. He went through that part. But as for what he taught, yeah, he would say, from moment to moment, wiping knowledge away.
Yeah.
So,
and I could completely agree with that. That's, there's many a times, even now, reflecting on me bringing up this question, this stuff was really fresh in my mind. I don't even know, it was yesterday or the day before. And the question was so clear, and my answers and the way I wanted to present it was so clear in that moment. And the whole reason it was so clear is because it came up while I was doing the dishes and I wasn't thinking about anything. There's no background code or anything. It came up, and I related it back to that video, but it wasn't even, I was doing the dishes after I'd watched that video, not even thinking about the video. It was kind of like reflecting on the idea of why I'm asking myself this question. I was like, oh, it probably came up from the video, whatever. Right. So I fully support that view, but when it comes to how to get to the place where Kay was coming from of being able to wipe away that knowledge and start from that, I don't know what to call it, level playing field where there's no it's the intuition. There's no force behind it, no seeming cause and effect situation. It's more of just it flowers from nothingness, just like the universe, right? And I'm all about that, and I get that, but I feel like so many people are so far away from that. And for me, if I think about, again, you think about that complexity tree or whatever you want to call it, where there's the singleness and then there's that growing out into complexity, that nothingness that we're talking about, that clean slate, to me, I can almost imagine that right after that point. So everything is like in that vertex form, and then it goes to the point, and then right after that is that clean slate that we're talking about, right?
Dude, you are doing it again. You did it last time where you were saying some shit that I wanted to say exact.
Yeah.
Please proceed. It's crazy. It's crazy how specific.
Exactly. So, it keeps reminding me of that Ishtak Bentov picture, where he showed that, we have all these points on the line, and you see that they all project out, right? And there's these overlappings, from this point projecting out, and then the point right next to it, there's this overlapping in this area, right? And so that I kind of imagine that kind of like almost like a family tree type thing, where, you have 50 points up here on the top line, and you have 25 points on a line below it, and those are projecting out in the 50 points, but there's only 25 points because, you're kind of collapsing all of those complex ideas to those points where they're the same thing, those archetypal connections, right? And you keep doing that, you keep lessening and lessening the points until you get down to that single point. And so when you get down there, and again, you could just take all that, and like he said, even the archetypes all the way down, all the levels, you can just wipe it all away. You don't even need all of it, right? You really don't. And I completely agree with that. But for me to understand why you don't, I feel like you can move closer and closer to that understanding when you start diving into the archetypes. You start seeing those where hey, I don't even care about the tit for tat anymore, because I saw that these archetypes help me take care of the situations. They help me derive a path forward in a general sense that makes me feel a little more confident about the path forward. Because again, I'm not just sitting in the archetypes and having faith that it's going to help me in the tit for tat. I'm not sitting in the tit for tat and looking back at the archetypes and saying, I don't need those. What I want to do is be in the tit for tat, find the archetypes, project back out in the tit for tat and keep doing that over and over again. So again, I'm trying to utilize the whole system, right? Now, again, you don't have to do that, but most people don't know. And I feel like that knowing for me kind of came from finding those archetypes, asking that question, what is thought? How do I think? What is thinking doing in my brain? Like, how does that all work? What's the psychology of it? What's it do for me?
Who is asking this question?
Who is asking this question? All those questions, you're getting to those archetypes. You're really searching for those points. And as you find them and reason them out, you start to kind of get that feeling of, you come into those tit for tat situations and you feel like you have a little bit better of an answer. You start getting where we're saying, hey, I don't need to yell at you and call you names and tell you that your ideas are stupid. I can ask you questions about it and I can formulate an argument against your ideology. Next level down, I can actually find the connections and help bridge that gap between our differences. Next level down, actually, both of our ideologies are saying the exact same thing, and we're just not recognizing it. And then next level down is everything is the same thing, and there's no reason to even play tit for tat. And next level down is just that nothingness. Like, again, I don't even have to think about any of this stuff because it just flowers automatically. It's just that is the way that life is, and it's going to come into existence no matter what. If I just let that happen, it happens. So all that is to say, I agree with what what Krishnamurti said.
Okay. All right. Well, damn. I had a bunch of ones going off in there. I don't know. I mean, I think like the question being posed and the sort of frame that it's being in by like finding the archetype to help you move forward is a question being asked by and for the secular world. And you could ask that question. I think Kay's point of view was more of a religious response to this sort of what's going on there, how to respond, whatever we're discussing right now. But I think ultimately, like the Lady Gaga conversation probably, or at least the Dalai Lama's part of it, is advocating for them to come together so that kindness or, I don't know, another way is what's flowering about. You're asking how to get there. So I think that's on the secular side of things.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to separate that because, I mean, some of these answers could be coming from a different point and they're just not adequate to the question. So how do you want to dice this one up? I mean, you still on the secular part of it? I mean,
no, I'm on all parts of it. Really, it's to me there really is something to that whole. There really is something to that whole the whole religious ideology, right? That's kind of what I'm getting at here. Is there is something to that whole having faith in a universal idea that brings people together, that helps them recognize that all their differences come from the same root. And the Bible is that for many people. And in all the different religions, they have their book or their ideologies that bring people together.
I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree. And I don't think that many people I think you made a comment about Christianity in some other way earlier and how the Bible shows you the archetypes too. I mean, I don't think people are seeing those archetypes.
No.
People might come together in this building, but when the service ends, these people on, this end of the pew or whatever, they might be neighbors who hate each other.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Or when it comes time to voting, that shit doesn't matter. Or 1,000 ways. And the very fact that there's the sex within, the religions, they're different. The religions themselves just being there is separation.
Yeah.
A lot of wars are religious wars, so
Yes.
Ideological wars. So,
but couldn't you agree that, and it seems to be only because we're already of this mind, right? We're of the mind of looking for the archetypes, but couldn't you agree that within a lot of those texts, the archetypes do get pretty obvious if you're looking for them?
No doubt.
Right?
Yeah.
And I agree with you that nobody's seeing those archetypes. Like nobody is getting that underlying message. And that's what I'm asking. Isn't that the issue?
Right.
That
right. And you're asking how can that be recognized by the person, and then what steps, how to proceed from that, how to see all that stuff differently.
I'm asking that question, but I'm also asking, is it necessary to see the underlying archetypes, which you kind of just answered? Because again, that is my ideology, that you need to get to where we're talking about that mind of K, that complete washing away. Maybe there is a person that is sitting in the tit for tat on the surface level, and one day his mind just washes everything away. And it's an epiphany. Great. It's an epiphany. Mm-hmm. It's like, wow, everything makes sense now. Mm-hmm. Why was I playing tit for tat this whole time? Mm-hmm. That, again, that could probably happen. It probably has happened, probably will happen, right? But it's going to be on the fringe. I feel like that's going to be on the 0.0001%, right? So for everybody else to get there, it seems like a more common route to derive that meaning, right? Become religious, get to that, read the Bible, and if you're just so lucky to see those archetypes play out, mm-hmm. you might get closer to understanding that principle. And so my question, though, is, again, is it necessary that we get there?
No.
Because that is an ideology that I'm holding, that and it's funny too, because it's the complete opposite from what my book says. It says life is perfect, and for life to be perfect, you have to take every situation into account, which means that the mass blindness to the archetypes within everything that's necessary to the whole system right now, and the system is perfect. So it's kind of like, again, I hold both ideologies at once, and so that's what I'm asking. Is it even necessary to get there?
Because I think, for one thing, we're forgetting here, man, it's easy to overlook. Blindness is an archetype. Mm-hmm. There's just going to be a person. There's just whatever. I'll use this model. It's flawed and elementary and romantic or whatever, but we are all God experiencing a different whatever, and
a different version of ourselves.
Yeah. And for this version here, it's to get back to that state. For this other guy, it's to dive so deep into hedonism. That's what that part of God wants to do. And I think that is why everything's perfect, because if everything is, then even the evil things are sort of not necessary, or they're just part of the play, So for that individual, no, it's not necessary. And they probably are, that's probably a fringe character as well of, someone who, never empties out, stays in that realm. So not for them then, I guess. But that's just one point. I mean, I still don't think it's necessary. I think it is good to advocate this because, put religion aside, just like the world, the secular situation, people are getting dumb, man. So, I mean, like, we need to, think about thinking and learn how to, see into things. And I think it was episode 1, I was talking about how Kay liked to define words in the original way. Intelligence means to read between, to see between the lines. So when I say dumb, I mean, that includes in this theoretical situation, I don't know, but I'm just going to use it. That includes all the way up to Stephen Hawking, a guy who wasn't at K. I'm just,
Yep.
That's dumb in the way I just said it. Intelligence is K to me. And that's the model I'm using right now. So, I mean, when I say I'm not trying to be critical of people and be unkind, I mean, we're all dumb is what I'm in my model until you get to that point. So, I think it's good to advocate this. I think it would be beneficial for the race, for what even just secular life is, but it's not necessary.
Yeah.
And then we can go back to like the firstborn, the once born, twice born thing. And generally speaking, at least according to that book, it was saying the once born person isn't even concerned about that center point. And they're fine to, they know it's there and they have faith in that. So I think it's necessary for somebody who finds it necessary, who puts that meaning on it themselves. And I think back to meaning, that's really the only meaning that there is what we assign to things. Not even just this, not pen, not that. I mean, just like goodness, beauty, truth, things like that. That's assigned. Yeah.
So if it's not necessary to go through that path, again, we're talking about how to solve these issues, these tit for tat issues, but in a deeper level so that it kind of flowers back into the expanse, the totality, in a better way, right? And so we could say that if wiping away is the goal, then trying to think of what I was going to, the path to get there. If wiping away is the goal, how does one get there?
Since I haven't gone there, I'm trying to talk from Kay's point of view. So
yep.
He would say the first step is the last step. That's how you get there, by a quantum leap. And so it's kind of like the beginning comes first. I mean, you have to empty out in order to make this quantum leap into emptiness. At least according to how he verbalizes it, it would appear that you need some sort of shock to wipe it away. And so what is that shock? And I'm sorry, you said something and I'm going to go off, but this is, I think the shock that Kay is advocating, I mean, it's because no one ever caught it. I mean, I can hear it and I didn't catch it, man. And he said it over and over. And we've talked about this in our emails. This is the kind of the stuff that I thought about during the week that's coming up. So I've said this before. I think Kay is the only thinker, any person that I've ever heard of any religion talk about the thinker and the thought. He's the only person who said that. I mean, you have archetypes of thinking and you see the same types of thoughts over and over. Yeah. Different sages or scientists or whoever, but are you familiar with that? We've talked about it. Yeah, and I really love that him and Bohm really dove into that a lot. Yeah. And that's what actually one of my favorite books from Kay is The Network of Thought. Mm-hmm. Right. So that whole idea of what'd you call it? Not an explosion. Some sort of shock or shock. Yeah. So the shock, as soon as I was trying to think of what a shock could have been for me. And obviously the first thing that comes to mind is psychedelics. Mm-hmm.
you can get a lot of shocks from that, right?
Sure.
But I don't even think that was kind of the culmination of it all. I don't think that was the apex of the whole thing. I think that was a stepping stone, right?
For sure.
And really the shock for me that even made me want to write a book came from that place where, again, that phrase that came into my mind in the midst of a meditation when it was, I feel like that that sitting was the first time I got to a place where I felt timelessness, where I felt I was the most quiet I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, a phrase, a sentence, a saying came into my brain without any forethought to it. And when I did start thinking about that sentence, I didn't necessarily even knew what it meant at the time. And so that threw another question into my brain is, how can I think a sentence that I don't even understand? And for me, that was such a profound question that to me was probably the shock.
I think two things. I mean, I think there's a profounder question, although that could have been profound. But I think one can be sure that the basin has not emptied out if you experience timelessness, or forethought or not, a thought occurred in this space. We can be sure that this is not emptiness, for one. So when you say, you had a thought that you've never seen it before, you can't recognize it, it doesn't mean anything to you. But I think you asked the question, how can you think a thought that you don't understand? It comes back to who is thinking the thoughts. If you imagine that anything that's happening inside of your mind is according to you, the character, that the question is valid. But the further question is, who is this person within thought that pretends to be separate from thought?
Yeah. And I think the question that I asked implies that it's literally like, how can I think a sentence that I don't even understand yet, implying that it's not me? If it was me, if it was the Rick that formulated the thought, I should have already known the elements that formulated the question. So the implication is, where did this come from? How did it happen? So, Bodhi, where did it come from?
The collective consciousness of the language maker. I don't know, the string of whatevers that broadcast to all of our brains all the time. But what I mean, though, is like on the whole, on the bigger picture, on this whole topic about the whole thing is, I think the big issue about why we are declining, it would seem, is because of the strengthening and the promotion of that strengthening of the character who has these thoughts or who doesn't have these thoughts, or etc., and who is also trying to become better all the time. I think that is and you can narrow that down to thought. Is it basically thought? That is the issue, that it has the error in perception, if you will.
Well, from evolution, we can generally determine that there's some type of benefit or end cause to any way that our mind may think or our bodies may move or cells may evolve into different things. So what is the benefit to promoting the divisiveness, to the separation, to the singleness?
Well, you have to, this is, now we're jumping back into topics far off this course. And the reasons why, if you want to keep it in this realm, it's because there is a character, there's an archetype in the world that is evil through and through. And that's God playing evil through and through. It wants to, whatever. You got a lot of those. That's the reason that someone would promote that. It's also fun to, hedonism is fun. There's a reason it is attractive, And so the whole culture, everything promotes it all the time, day in and day out. Every sentence we speak that has the letter I promotes it. Mm-hmm. Now, this is another word that Krishnamurti always talks about. Individual. How would you define individual?
Singleness.
In fact, it is the exact opposite, my friend. Mm-hmm. Indivisible, undivided, not separate. When I say I mean me, world. I, not I. But a real individual, there isn't this separation. Mm-hmm. So that's the direction we go, in the separated way. And I think it's basically all to do with thought, and it's error in perception that is the issue here. And I think the shock, if you will, there's a word I couldn't tell you. I think it's Sanskrit or something like that, but it means the turning over of the mind. Mm-hmm. And I think that happens when, again, meditation is thought shattering against its own nothingness. That is the shock. That's the turning over. That's the realization that this whole thing is a lie. That me and mine and all that is not the case. That's how you would get everyone, if they can have that realization. How to get the realization? Do we take it there? You talk about it.
Well, I just want to stop on one point on there, though, is the error. So why, again, I was suggesting that I don't like, error is a weird word to give it. It's also an appropriate word to give that idea of what you're talking about, but also
I don't know.
I would say there's
sure?
I would say
sure? I might be brutally just absolutely set on this word as the perfect word.
I don't.
It may be so, man.
I think there's multiple ways you can look at an error. I don't believe there is any errors at all, but there's things we would associate with the word error for a means to an end. And let me describe, like, when you say that it's an error in thought, right? I still think
it is. I'll reframe it. It is thought, apostrophe S. It is thought's error in perception. Is thought, as it functions, creating an error in raw perception. That is basically the issue of humanity. That's my hypothesis.
Okay.
There.
And my question is, I think even if it is an error in any way, shape, or form, there's always going to be a benefit from such a situation.
For sure.
Which is why it happens in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, what is the benefit of that error?
Well, for one, it keeps the game going. That there is an error in perception makes me see myself as not you right now.
Exactly. It's perpetuating.
If the error were corrected, that is purified, if you will, this whole thing would collapse. But what I mean by error is, I guess, like, it's not error. You're right. The word isn't error. But
no, I still like the word. Again, it's like I can use that word, but skew the meaning of it. Again, the way you're thinking about the word error is in the tit for tat level.
And I guess my meaning of error is skew.
Yeah.
It's like, if you could, let's just pretend, I keep coming back to this image in my mind today of the, I keep saying like the opposite side of the coin. So let's say like a disc, the disc universe or whatever, it's just like bending and looking back at itself in such a way, if you could say something like that. So
nope, that's
if you were
perfect.
to fix the error, you would see it clean. And I think that's what, Kay was advocating, where he was coming from. People like that are coming from. And it's not necessary to do that at all. For one thing, that's that. But if you were interested.
And so that's exactly what you said. It's perpetuating the system that's happening. And, in my book, I try to get to that point of being able to talk about this, and it's the hardest thing to talk about. So I'm going to try to describe it again to get on with my point, but it's necessary to kind of throw this out there of why is existence happening at all? Like why are we even in this errored perception? That's
even the
that
disc
coin,
at all.
The disc looking back at itself to derive that singleness, that individualness.
Right.
Why is it even happening? And so, I try to get at it and describe it in language. It's impossible, but it's that whole idea that to be nothing. We always talk about everything flowering from nothing. It's in a lot of the scriptures, and it's an idea that's very prevalent. Everything. How do you get everything from nothing, right?
Right.
Well, and my reasoning through it, which isn't even a reasoning, it's just following the paradox all the way down. Is that you can't just have nothing, because nothing itself, non-existence, can't exist as a concept without existence. There needs to be that mirroring, that comparison for either idea to even exist. And to have a nothing, to have non-existence, there's individualness in non-existence. There's a singleness. Non-existence is one thing, right? So if you have one thing and nothing outside of it, that means you're some kind of infinite nothingness, some like infinite spatial realm, right? But you're not even a realm. Again, this is where I can't even talk about this, because you can't be a realm or else that's something, right? So that paradox, when you follow that through, and again, you can't bring it into language, but you can kind of get this ethereal feeling about it, right? You can kind of get this like, what is non-existence? We understand it as a concept. We can intuitively think about it, yet it is nothing. Like, how can you think about nothing, right? There's that paradox. So playing off of that, the coin, the nothingness and the somethingness bending and looking at itself, the separation comes from the singleness of nothingness, understanding that it's an individual thing with nothing outside of it. But as soon as you get that perception that you're an individual thing, you automatically create something outside of yourself. You cannot have perception without being limited, without having something outside of yourself, right? So it's kind of like this mirroring effect, this, cognitive dissonance, this error in the code, where it's kind of, if you think about it, it's kind of like, typing in that code in the computer that makes the computer blow up, like make the thing break itself because it just can't compute. It's a paradox that makes something infinitely dense and infinitely large, and it just can't compute that, right? So if you start from there and I go, okay, the error in the code, it's perpetuating itself in the reality. And we're saying that we don't want that to happen. And there was something that you said there a while back about this evil God that is perpetuating the system, right?
Well, I didn't say that.
No, I know you didn't.
Oh, okay. Well, there's the shred of God.
Yeah, exactly.
The one character of God, not God. I mean, okay.
So
man.
Yeah. If we turn this to, some biblical characters, right? And I'm going to use the biblical characters to kind of explain something. So, and actually, I'm kind of developing the story on my body. I got tattoos everywhere now, and the right side of my body is kind of like things to do with light, right? And then the left side of my body is things to do with darkness, like the void. And it's the clash of light and the void, right? And everybody in the Bible and most religions, they see light as the good thing, the light of God, and that's the thing that creates all of life and all of creation. So that's the good power, right? And they see the void as the bad power. Mm-hmm. Well, the thing about light is that's the exact thing that's separating us. It's the exact thing that's creating the division. It's the thing that traps us in the singleness and this individualism. It's the thing that creates the reality that we're living in, where we all are separated, right? The void is where that all comes together, the nothingness that grew into the complexity, right? Mm-hmm. So technically, people are like, the light is God and the darkness is the devil. Well, from that perspective, it's the opposite. God is dividing us, right? So that's kind of why I stuck on that point that you're making, right?
God is dividing itself.
God is dividing itself.
Our characters are being divided by God.
Exactly. I'm just using the biblical references. It gets dicey, and there's a reason I'm playing off of that diciness, right? So I'm just saying you can see it in the opposite direction. You can see this whole, darkness bringing everything together. What happens when you turn off the lights? You do not see the separateness anymore. It is all one thing, darkness, right? And that may feel lonely but it's the truth. That's like, we are all one thing, one lonely thing, right? The whole reason I'm bringing all this up is because reality, God, whatever you want to call it, the apex of everything, and I've talked about this before, it's the interplay between that lightness and darkness. It's not the lightness itself. The lightness itself isn't the totality. The darkness isn't the totality. It's the interplay that creates the reality that we live within. It creates the separateness, right? So when you say error in thought, and for me, I'm asking what the benefit is, and what is the benefit to any seemingly bad situation, all the negative aspects of life, like murder and death and all these dark, horrible aspects. It's generally to divide more, but at the same time, make it better.
Right.
I was
going to say, I think error actually is the perfect word. Just like, it's only one half of a situation, like void and light or whatever. So on the one hand, it keeps the simulation or what have you going. On the other hand, the error necessitates a solution for those who will see it. So it is.
That is evolution. It's the system fighting against itself. So every part attempts to be better, to make new combinations, to make better combinations, to overcome things. And so that error in thought, yes, it is perpetuating the system, but it's perpetuating the system in what it feels like is a better direction. Because if you keep trying to make these combinations, you might come up with something that's better for you. And here's the kicker. In all of this division and recombination, the whole point, and I don't know how to get into this without taking an hour to explain it, but for me, the whole point is because we do want to get back to that individualness, to that singleness, to that singularity. That's we're trying these new combinations because we're trying to build that back up. We're trying to move forward and bring things together. Yeah.
Just making the game more interesting too.
If you think physically, like, why do we build new technology? Why are we trying to get off the earth? We're trying to expand our species, if you think of the human race as just one organism, right? The human species is one organism. We're trying to expand ourselves into space. We're trying to cover the totality of space so that we can become greater and greater and greater and hopefully evolve into one thing again, right? So it's again, it's a paradox. We're dividing because we want to recombine to become singleness again, all the while we're getting farther away from that singleness. And that's what reality is. It's the perpetuating of that whole system. And so again, when you say error in thought, it's necessary.
Yeah.
It's a benefit.
Right.
It's something that we are benefiting from, even though it is an error.
Right. And now I guess I want to bring this point back up. And for the character so inclined, who finds it necessary to go back or whatever, I think, so the stakes are higher, but the need to fix the error are also higher. And I think they sort of raise at the same time.
Yeah.
And that is why there's a quantum leap, which is needed there, where after the cone hits the one, that there's some sort of gap. And now, you brought it up earlier, man, and I brought this book and set it aside because it has a diagram that it said exactly what you said, man. And this is Benoit. Can you see this? I put it up?
Yeah. Yep.
So on the last page, and now I want to add, I also put this one aside. He was friends with Wei Wu Wei, so it says the negative way right on the cover. And so this last paragraph is talking about the negative way. And then there is this diagram, and can you see that?
A little bit, and I got it. God, dominion of pride. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, you could say, if you could translate his graph, pride would be the surface level.
Yep.
Whatever that may be. And then this,
I love that.
Diminution?
I love that word too. The pride, using that word as the surface level is.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it's good.
Pride ideologies, having pride
right.
in that surface level tit for tat ideology area. Perfect.
Right. Exactly. Perfect. And then, so basically the cutting down of your own pride through successive, what he calls humiliations to that pride. Deliberate humiliations too, according to the negative way. Yeah. Which this would not be a once born kind of ideology. But then, you get down to the center point, and then there's a gap, he says, where afterwards it's the realization of the self. So yeah, I think that's part of it. The gap. I would say, man, where you were at, where you felt timelessness, when we already said this, man, you're up against the glass, man. Yeah. And I think we were saying on that, but you can't go farther. Well, as this character of God, he cannot. Yeah. But I think there's a leap that happens somehow where, I don't know, osmosis, man, you just sort of seep through and turn back around. I don't know.
Well, when you were saying okay, but you also felt that timelessness, which means that you weren't actually in the timeless, but it was more of, when I say I experienced timelessness, it's more of it's like being asleep, right? It's all of a sudden you come to, and you just know that moments passed and you weren't in those moments,
Once again, the timelessness by the lack of time that your time measure. Yeah. Felt.
So when it was that phrase that triggered me out of the timelessness. It's what brought me back. Right. So it's kind of I felt like I kind of, I entered into a realm unconsciously, and something attached to me, and I came back with it, Yeah. And it's just you jump, you leap over, and it's just black. And then you come back, and all of a sudden you're here again, and you're what, and then that came out. God, there was something there you were saying about, so again, that chart that you just brought up.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was trying to get at about going down the layers of archetype. Right. Humiliation. Yeah. Again, you're humiliating yourself out of that pride. If you're on the surface level, I hold this ideology and I know it to be true. Right. Right. You get humiliated out of that. You literally you start to go, yeah, but this thing that's oppositional to that is also true. And I'm starting to reason that out. How could that possibly be? And now
even before we get there, because that's kind of an advanced step, but let's just take the regular person, man. Mm-hmm. You have an ideology, and can that person any regular person, like let's put it on politics, right? A person has a prideful, this is what I believe or whatever. But can that person just say, I'm not a politician. I don't really know. You know what I mean? Or like with science, like that's the first.
Yeah.
You have to like allow for this possibility that
you don't know.
There's an error.
Yep.
And then we get to these advanced things where.
Exactly. So that humiliation all the way down, even when you get down and you're like, yeah, but now I see the connection between the two. So now I know, right?
Yeah. Right.
No, more humiliation. And you keep going until that one point where you do make that leap. So that's where I was asking, is it necessary to go along that path? I do agree that it's not necessary. You could just Krishnamurti it away, just wipe it all away all at once and do that leap. You could leap right from that surface level all the way to that bottom, right? You could do that, but most people aren't going to. So again, it's like for most people, what's beneficial. And, as you're going down and figuring out, the main question I was trying to ask is, okay, I've wiped it all away. And I feel that is very, very beneficial to me, right? I humiliated myself, made the leap, came back.
Okay.
We're good. That seems like the way I want to go, right?
Uh-huh.
But that's an ideology.
Is it?
And you already answered this. Yeah, but that's going to work for some people and that's going to be beneficial for some people. Some people will never even start even that progress of getting the leap, and that's great and all. But we kind of started out with this saying that we need to grow the amount of people that do get down those surface levels, that do make the leap. Number one, that would be great. If you get 100 people making that leap, now we're really talking about solutions to all these global issues, right?
For sure.
Or even just getting more people on those next levels down, right?
Right. Yeah.
But from what we're talking about is that, again, it's perfect already as it is. There's a reason that all these things happen. There's a benefit to the error. There's a reason that we're in this divisiveness, that the world, the globe has made it to the exact point in time that we're at now. Mm-hmm. There's some universal principle that brings it all together that does make this moment perfect. Right?
Sure.
And so when I ask, is that universal principle necessary to recognize for us to be better? I guess I am kind of asking a rhetorical question, or almost like a paradoxical question, because again, we have this ideology and we're sitting on both sides of the fence, man. We've talked about both the benefits of both of, no, it's all perfect as it is, but it could be better, right? And that's evolution. It could be better. How do we get more people talking about the right way to make it better?
Right.
And what I'm asking is, that's an ideology. How do I know that that's the right way? How do I not know that the direction that everything is going in isn't the perfect way already?
One more time. How do you know that? How does one know that? What do you mean?
How do I?
How can you be sure that the findings
that the way
we're
that the way we're everything we're talking about it now, that we should bring people down to this lower level. We need to spread this word. Why shouldn't I just shut up and let things play out the way they are? Why are we doing this podcast, Bodhi? Why do we even talk? Why are we even friends? Why do we have this conversation?
Ultimately, if we really believe that this is the disc skewed, and then this doesn't matter. And I think that's because the whole thing already knows it, even if it matters to other people and helps the experience that's going on right now, it doesn't really matter. And we could shut up. But again, it's fun to be here. That's why God's doing it. And so I don't know, man, why does it, why is the sky blue? Why are boobs good? It just does, you feel like talking for 2 hours to somebody that you pretend is not your own reflection. So
Yeah.
yes.
Perfect answer, man. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's fun. And that's
Yeah.
it's funny to hear that too, because we really could just be sitting here arguing about the tit for tat all day. But if we had that underlying thought about it being fun at the same time, it makes the conversation totally different, even if we do have opposing views.
Hell yeah. And like, again, here, like, I'm going to step back, just sentences before sentences ago and just say like, but yeah, man, people just, I wish they knew that. I wish they knew that feeling, of, I don't know, because everyone knows the other side. It's just like, when you're stuck in pride, like that, this tit for tat, it's like, no, and all that, like no one, but just let it go, man. It's so good sometimes, I mean, it's good every time. But, I guess that's why, I like to have this discussion also. It would just be good for everyone, I think.
I don't know why. It might've been something he said, but it just reminded me of another point I wanted to make with the whole talk of meaning, and why I do think it can be individually beneficial to start thinking about these things. So on that whole of like, everything is perfect. It's doing what it needs to do, and it's doing it for a reason. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that I've gotten great benefit out of this thought process. And there's a reason that we talk, and there's a reason that you explore the same types of things, right? We're finding benefits from it. And one of the benefits from it, and that's kind of why I brought up the whole idea of meaning, is because that whole idea of meaning creates order out of chaos. There's a chaos that you need to order to feel calm and good about it, right? It's not this looming presence of something that could kill you, or you don't know how to react. So you get, what that leads to is just anxiousness and depression and just a bad outlook on life, and it just leads to negative feelings. Like literally inside, it's like you're about to explode. Your atoms are vibrating so much, and there's so much friction and tension and tightness, and it's like you're just a ball of energy that just wants to break out, and you don't know how to order that chaos, right? And so, it's especially now with the global pandemic and everybody being stuck at home and not able to go anywhere or do anything, there obviously depression, anxiety, all that stuff is on the rise.
Right.
And it was kind of on the rise before that. Maybe and again, I'm just talking about tit for tat data right now. I'm talking about statisticians. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Is that, the science of statistics? Taking the data, but it's like, are we actually more depressed? I don't know for sure. But what I do know is that lack of meaning, that absence of a search of meaning, right? When you think you know everything, when you think, oh, science has it all figured out, religion has it all figured out, somebody else has it all figured out, and I'm just going to have faith that that's how it is. And you stop looking for that meaning. You stop creating new meaning. You stop searching. That's where you become
and then
that
nothing has meaning, and then et cetera, et cetera.
And so it's kind of like that idea, bring it back to that visual of the wave, right? You have the wave pattern bouncing between opposites. You have that neutral line. When everything is figured out and every situation is null because everybody else has figured it out, I'm not going to search for it. You kind of you collapse that energy. That energy gets less and less. You're looking for meaning less and less, and then it becomes null. It becomes that neutrality point. It becomes stagnant. And in stagnation is that moment when you're feeling depressed and anxious, because it's like, I have nothing to overcome. I have nothing to make myself feel better. There's no energy there. And so it loops back to that whole idea of the error being a benefit, the obstacles, the negativity of life and everything is an obstacle to overcome. It's what perpetuates existence, because now it gives us meaning. It gives us a reason to continue on. And if you just were happy-go-lucky every day, you get stuck in this repetitive schedule where everything is going your way. You just keep getting more and more money. You just keep, doing the things that make you feel you become such a full hedonistic person, but all of those hedonistic desires are fulfilled. People get bored. Yeah. Why do we get bored? Because you're not growing. You're not becoming better. You're stagnating. Either you're getting depressed, you're getting anxious. So the endless search for meaning for me is what helps me to continue on and not be anxious and not be depressed. And which is why I asked, is that lack of meaning where everybody thinks that everything is figured out? It's obvious. This is right. This is wrong. This is black. This is white. And you're not questioning yourself and questioning the people around you. You're stagnating, you're getting depressed and angry. And so for me, it's on that individual level. That's where it really kind of hits home.
Yeah.
I think it's an obvious benefit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think that we, in the beginning, I just put it in different words. Like, is it basically thought, that is the culprit here, if you will. Say that last thing again. We had a pause there, and boy, it just flew away out of my head, but it was right on the nose, man.
The meaning is, it's beneficial to search for meaning because then you're overcoming things on a regular basis and you're always asking questions and you're always searching, never assuming that's the pride, never assuming you just keep going.
Right.
Keep evolving it.
That's the word, man. So I think when Krishnamurti would always say, so you said the specific phrase, your search for meaning is kind of the meaning, where it keeps, and so that was the phrase that, struck this. Kay would always say that the means are the ends. And so in another way, like maybe, I don't have a particular quote, maybe something in Zen would be like, the path is the goal.
Yeah.
Just to keep going, just keep experiencing. Because then, if there's no meaning, I mean, it's obvious, it's natural. If there's no meaning, there's no meaning, and you're going to stagnate and it's going to get worse, and just keep going. You know what I mean? There's no other reason except for to keep walking the path.
Exactly. And that's, and it's a paradox. It speaks directly to your point and my point at the beginning, which is, if you cling to a religion, if you cling to the Bible and you think you found it, I don't need to figure out the meaning of life. It's right here.
Right.
I think I understand what the meaning of life is because of this text and what somebody else told me.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to stagnate. A lot of religions, further people's depression, which furthers their perceived necessity of that religion. They're thinking like, I need this. I need to cling on. I need to go back to church because I'm starting to slip back into bad habits. I'm starting to become an alcoholic again. I'm starting to get depressed and need drugs again. So I'm going to go back into it's like perpetuating itself,
For sure.
But if you were to take on a religion and not take it at face value, at the surface value, but look deep into it and find those connections to not only its own contradictions. That's kind of the start, is why does the Bible contradict itself?
Right.
Okay, why is that? And then you start to find those answers, and then you go, and then wait, so if it's contradicting itself and there's something in that's palpable and necessary, does its contradiction to other texts, is there also something in that? And then you keep finding that meaning and you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And again, eventually you butt up against that leap that you're talking about. You kind of butt up against that nothingness where everything is the same. And then you make that leap. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I've come back. I feel like I've gone as far as I can go. And then what I was trying to get at is that is an ideology, which puts me back on the surface level, which I then need to ask you, is this necessary? Again, and then you come back to, you could be the guy on the surface the whole time.
And that, yeah. But I think here is when, like, yes, you said that earlier, and at first I was like, I don't know if it is an ideology, but it is to say it out, to say da 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 is an ideation for sure, which puts you essentially on the surface, at least while you're verbalizing it or thinking it. You have to be, language is on the surface for sure. But, we still need to use it. So you keep coming up and going back down anyway. And so I think that's the sort of cleaning the slate moment after moment. Because you're going to have to, once you establish on, going deep down and realizing you've been at the surface the whole time, if you will, then Kay says, now just do this thing without the words and refresh every time you catch yourself slipping, and there won't be any ideation in it. And that's, of course, his choiceless observation, without a choice, without this or that, so no idea about it. So again, it's both, you know what I mean? Like, yes, it is deep and on the surface, and it's always both, man, and neither.
Well, yes. I think that's about all the time I have for today, and also it's a good stopping point.
It is.
It did raise one question for me, but I don't have another hour to talk about the question, so maybe I can leave it for the next time we talk, and you can think about it along the way. But just thinking, okay, well, what about the individual, the being, whatever you want to call it, that does live in that timelessness the whole time?
I got it. We'll be talking. I could already go on an hour, but
that's what I'm saying is like that. I don't have it. I wish I did. So think about that. And that's what I'd like to talk about, ideas of death are coming up and all of that. And we've touched that a little bit on previous conversations, but I think we should dive deep into that next time.
All right.